Okay, Dani, here we go. Take two.
Take two.
With, I totally apologize. So for the guests, we don't have to talk about Dani being late, even though she probably was.
I was
today.
not.
I think you were a little late, but
no, I was not.
But I just screwed up because we went, I think, 10 minutes into a recording, and I never hit record. Go figure.
Which my fault too, because I meant to call you out on it and I didn't. So I should have.
But we don't ever rehearse. So
don't.
I think it's kind of good.
That's fine.
So what do we got going today?
And I will say I'm excited because you played our original opening. So it was just meant to be. And
that's by mistake because I still haven't learned this.
I did complain earlier about you because this is day 2 for us. So we recorded yesterday. You played a different intro. Not a fan, but you played my favorite intro.
I think most people are aware of this, but we had a producer that used to be here, and he had a great idea that we would have all this equipment.
He thought we could run the show by ourselves.
And we just send the stuff to him. And the editing takes place offsite and everything. And so we still have these hiccups that, this is gear that I'm not a technical.
It's funny because this is the second time, and thankfully we caught it only 10 minutes in.
I know.
The last time, I think we were almost half an hour in, and we were like, John was like, there's the deer in headlights. Like,
I was looking down and I saw the record button green, and I'm like, oh fuck. Sorry. I know some people don't like my swearing.
Okay, you didn't swear on the last 2 episodes, so we're giving you some.
As Mike Tyson would say, change your channel.
Also,
right?
I just realized this. Okay, we're going to talk about that later. But leading into
what? Oh yeah, we got a guest again.
We do. Day 2.
Let me give everybody a hint out there about our guest. Is that what is that? Dani, I think that's a honk.
I think that's a horn, but we can. I think that's a horn, but we can use it as fire.
Play with it, damn it. That's a honk, people. That's a honk.
It can be whatever you want it to be, John.
I want it to be. It's going to be a honk.
Okay, then it's a honk.
Okay.
All right. So moving on from the honk, the horn, but they go hand in hand. Whatever. Continuing our Women in Parking series. I know we're all very excited. We've been talking about this for so long. We've been talking about it on LinkedIn.
Honestly, the Women in Parking series started with us over a year ago.
Yeah, with Kendra Petty. Yeah, Kendra Petty.
Who wrote a book and has a very courageous story, not just about women in parking, but Kendra herself and her life story, which that could be a movie.
She was one of the first guests.
Shout out to Kendra.
Yeah. We miss you, Kendra.
Executive Vice President, Laz Parking. So what do we got?
So today we have the one and only.
Hi.
Kacey
Siskind.
Kacey Siskind introducing herself for the second time, thanks to John Conway. Have another beer.
Oh, it's okay.
Okay.
I apologize, Kacey.
It's okay.
But we
I like
always
talking about myself.
There's no hey, I'm just gonna tell you, there's no rehearsal in this place.
Well,
so
hey, there's nothing wrong with introducing yourself a second time. We want to hear more. Like we just got a little taste.
Yeah, so maybe this is one. Maybe we should rehearse, right?
Yeah.
What do you think?
We probably should be better about it, but
wrong.
Okay, never mind. Welcome, Kacey. Welcome so much.
I'm
so excited. So excited to have you.
So Kacey Siskind is with HonkMobile.
Wait, we got
HONK. It's just HONK now. We got rid of the mobile.
Oh,
so
okay.
I have to say that for my marketing.
Okay,
team
so I apologize to.
We don't want them to, make us take this episode down.
Senior VP, client success or customer success.
Yep.
Kacey Siskind,
that's
SVP.
Yep.
But again, we have to give the shout out all the way from Toronto.
Came all the way from Toronto.
First time in the Mile High City.
That's right.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
We talked. You skied and you had some.
Well, you asked if I've never been here because you're like you don't ski, and
That's right.
was telling you that I learned how to ski when I was in my 40s because I we were taking our kids on a ski trip, and I definitely did not want to be the mom who didn't ski and didn't even give it a shot. I have 2 girls, and I wanted to sort of show them, like, you got to go for it. And so I tried very hard to learn how to ski, but it was not ideal. I was very scared the whole time, terrified. I took some lessons, and suffice to say, I'll probably never get back on skis ever again.
That could be traumatic. I mean,
it was. Yeah, I get nervous thinking about it.
So my wife,
I wish I skied,
is a native of Colorado, which I find fascinating. Most Coloradans don't grow up skiing. It's bizarre.
I know, that is really bizarre.
I'm from New York, and we came out here skiing as kids.
Yeah.
And so I taught her recently, and flipping the birds, took off her skis, F you, because I have a very weird training style. It's kind of like take you up on the
that's what my husband
greens
did.
a couple times, and then you're
right
going from green to black.
That's
and
exactly
we went
how
from the
it's
green.
supposed to
I was on the green
go.
learning how to ski with my instructor, and then 2 runs in, my husband's like, up to the blues. I'm like, what? And I got up to the top. I thought, okay, I can do this. And then I looked down, and I started to cry for real. And then I went down on my bum crying the whole way down the hill.
Yeah, so that's a similar story. I skied a little ahead down the blue, and I'm looking up, and she's looking, and then the next thing I know, she's kind of near the lodge.
Yeah.
And takes off her skis. I see this big bird flip, and then she goes into the
like,
lodge.
I'm done.
And I'm like, I'm hiking back up, going, holy shit! What the hell did I just
do? We took a ski trip. I took a ski trip with Joe and Tanya. I think it was last year, maybe the year before. But same thing. I grew up skiing. I grew up in New Mexico, and I grew up skiing in Colorado mountains or snowboarding. And so they take lessons, and my friend, a mutual friend of Joe and I, came up with us. Great snowboarder. And so Tanya's like, I'm going to go sit at the bar. Okay, great. Joe, let's go. And what do we like? The only way that you took lessons all day, so you should be able to get down this blue. And the first 10 feet, he completely just loses it. And we were like, oh shit. But he got his skis back really quickly, and then made it all the way down with us.
Joe's the one that didn't know how to ski?
Yeah, Joe doesn't know how to. He does now.
But he's got hockey player legs.
He does.
So
he does now, though.
He picked it up pretty quick, I'm sure.
Yeah. Couple falls, but I was like, hey, the only
shit.
the only way down.
I just really am.
Yeah, the only way down
my wife told me I'm never fucking.
I'm afraid of
skiing with you
heights.
again.
No, I'm afraid of heights. Like that's
hard.
It's not good.
But
it's not for me. The sport is, and I idolize it. I watched people. My husband's a great skier. I'm just no.
Yeah, I grew up skiing, but I taught my daughter. I guess it's early. When you teach the kids early, they'd have no fear.
No fear.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of the method I taught my wife, and that I had to probably rethink
It's a little bit different when you're
Yes.
older too. Like
I know.
As you get older, I have a lot of fear instilled in me of hurting myself. So
I walk gingerly. As I've aged years, I definitely gingerly walk downstairs. Like I'm conscious. I don't want to fall.
Yeah.
It's strange. I used to bop everywhere. Now I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna slow
downstairs
it down.
and in parking lots. Yeah. There's a lot of potholes and surface
Not
lots.
interested in the sprained ankle.
Okay, so back to HonkMobile. We're at
HONK.
HONK. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
I know. It's hard.
Jesus.
It's
hard.
By the end of the show, we'll get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully. Out of Toronto, Canada.
Yes, we are based in head office is in Toronto.
Head office in Toronto, very clean city across the what is that? The Great Fall thing, Niagara Falls. Buffalo.
We are about an hour and a half from Niagara Falls.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, on the
okay.
Canadian side,
That
which is
Great
nicer
Fall
than the American
thing.
side, actually.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Buffalo's
It's
an
a
armpit.
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay,
I'm from New York, so I can say that.
Yeah.
So
for the second time, and apologies again on this, but I was saying earlier, I'm so excited to have you here for so many reasons. But even after in all of our conversations, I don't know your story. I don't know where you came from, how long you've been in parking, if you've been at HONK since the beginning of your days in parking, or what. How did you end up in this wonderful industry?
So it's been 11 years. Actually, just September was 11. End of August was about 11 years. And it all started. I was an event planner for 13 years. And and doing all kinds of different events, working in venues in Toronto. We had these old movie theaters that we used to convert into event venues. So I worked in venues, and then I had kids and went out on my own, had my own company, and I did a ton of different events and raised my kids. And then I became a spin instructor and taught spin for about 10 years also.
Wow.
And in between all of that, I sort of towards the end of my event career, Michael Back, who's our CEO. We will give Michael a good shout out to Michael Back. Michael Back, the best. Michael and I have been friends since we were kids, and
I didn't know.
Yeah, we go way back, and I was kind of done. I hated events. I was sick of it. I needed a change, and he had just sold a payments company that he had been in for about 13 years as well, and he was figuring out what he was going to do next because he went to work for a bank, and that banks and entrepreneurs are not great. No, they don't go hand in hand.
Not a great mix, always, yeah.
And anyway, so he was figuring out what he was going to do, and he sort of brought this idea over dinner one night. I'm thinking about blah, 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 and I was like, I'm in. Let's do it. Like, I don't care what I do. I'll start with you. I'll just give me a job. I will help. I don't even know. I don't even know anything about parking, and let's go. So we parking, yeah. I was like, I don't know. Okay, cool. An app for parking. It sounds cool. Again, it's 11 years ago. There were apps out there. There was nothing in Toronto at the time. Literally nothing. The Canadian market was fairly green. Pay by phone was in the West Coast, and there just really wasn't a lot going on in terms of the app world. And there was no QR codes at that time. There were strictly apps. So we went to a parking conference. The Canadian Parking Association had a conference, and Michael and I were like, let's go check it out. So we went to Montreal. We met Patrick Sweck. He was our first friend in parking.
Shout out to Patrick.
Yeah, we love Pat.
We
love Pat. And Pat works at HONK now, which is amazing. But he was our first friend.
He's been there a while.
Yeah, he's been 4 years, 5 years. Just right before COVID. Anyway, so we just started this company. We started out of Michael's kitchen, basically. Hired some.
I love those kind of stories.
Yeah, you hear the garage stories, but this really was like legitimately we were in his kitchen. Hired some developers to develop the app, and our CTO at the time, he's not with us anymore. We have maybe a year later, we hired a new CTO, and Tony's been with us ever since. Yeah. Listen, I love parking. It's sounds so crazy, but I love this industry.
I do too.
I really do. I came out of this event world. I was going to fashion shows and this and that and living in Toronto in the big city and doing all these big events. And I got into this wacky world of parking. And then I'm like...
You're the weirdo in parking. You're at a party and everybody's like, ooh, what do you do? Parking.
Yeah,
and then everybody's walking away from you. What? What did I do?
What does that even mean?
I know.
But I met some amazing people in this industry. And right away, so at the beginning... I went to a ton of conferences, sort of right off the bat. Maybe not in the first year, but by the second year, we were starting to ramp it up. And I would go a lot by myself because Michael was busy sort of building the company.
Jeez.
And not only was it, but don't forget, 10 years ago, there weren't a lot of women in parking, right?
No.
So it's changed a lot over the last 10 years, a lot. But at that time, I was kind of one of not very many.
Right.
I've always had a ton of guy friends my whole life, growing up, high school, university, like that. So I just kind of was like, all right, let's go. One of the boys, let's do this thing.
An industry you can vibe in, yeah.
And I, right away met, I don't know, the famous Nathan and Charlie.
Charlie DeBow.
Yeah, yep. And Danelle. And we just, all of us, became quick friends. And they were my brothers. They just took me under their wing. They're like, you need to meet these people. And this is important to understand this piece. And they taught me a lot. And we just had everyone I met, I had such a good time that I was like, all right, I'm in this for the long haul.
It's pretty cool. So what do you tell people on the plane, the famous conversation? Oh, what do you do, Dani?
Yeah, it's one of those, I'm in parking. And then they say, what do you do in parking? That's weird. What about parking? And then okay, well, it's a little easier for me because everyone uses a parking app or a QR code or text to pay at this point. So it's not a lot to explain there. I have an app for parking. Oh, the blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, so you're kind of the cool side.
Yeah, I'm a little bit on the cooler edge of things.
You're I got it.
It's the tech side. No, and it's not as hard to explain that, but I also tend to get into... More importantly, people will say to me, why do you go to so many parking conferences? That's the bigger question I get. And then I get into it, listen, it's about a $30 billion industry. You got to think about what's in parking: gates, pay stations, apps, lighting, enforcement, like all
property
of these things,
management.
tickets, property management, all the
12-story building,
right? And then they start to
maintenance.
understand a little bit. People take for granted that you pull into a spot, you park your car, you pay, and you get out of there.
Yeah, it's the experience that nobody
The
remembers.
bane of everybody's
Say,
existence.
like,
If
the
it's a good experience.
Parking is the first and the last impression, not just for like venues, but for anywhere that you're going.
Yeah.
So you always, we say that we want it to be the experience that's not remembered, because if you remembered, it's likely a very
Correct. Not a good experience.
not a good
Oh, of
experience.
course.
Yeah.
Of course, yeah.
No, I know. And I think part of what's nice about my side of it is that I truly believe that the payment technology has helped make it a better experience. Like
Yeah.
it is just so much easier
Agreed.
to
I
pull
think
up your
you're-
phone
yeah.
and use an app or scan a QR code or whatever, however you're doing that piece. Like I still get to a gate and have some anxiety around it.
I do too.
Like what's this going to
Yeah.
be like for me today?
Especially nowadays, like if you're in a garage and something's not working and you're stalled, it's at night and you're
100%.
sitting there and can't get out, like that's a traumatic
Well, I have
experience.
this whole anxiety about, I'm like, is the ticket machine going to accept my ticket? What if there's a ticket jam? What if there's no call center button? How
Wow,
am I
you're
going to
really
get out?
in.
Well,
Yeah.
because I was in the
you're in
operations world,
parking,
right?
yeah.
And so some
Yeah.
people, like,
You're really in parking.
I
really in it.
experience this from an operator's perspective.
I'm going to
where,
be thinking of you every time you're parking your car.
Oh,
Wow.
I do. I
deep.
don't like to park in garages. I will say
I
that.
don't
I
love
like.
it either. That
I'm
could
a
be a woman
surface
thing.
girl.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we should remove
I
the
don't
gates.
like.
and-
I love
Yeah.
a good.
Be a lot
I love to
better
walk a
experience.
good
I think so, too.
parking garage though. Like that's people always say. I'm like, I actually feel this is wild. People are like, I can't believe you're saying this, but I actually feel really safe in a parking garage. Like I can walk parking garages. I walk parking assets all the time,
Right.
but I don't like to park in them. Not because I don't think that they're safe. I mean, there's a whole safety issue behind it. I get it, but it's more about the experience on getting out of me
Yes.
being able. I'm like, am I going to be able to get out? And that's just a gamble that I don't really want to take.
I get that.
Yeah.
Did everybody hear me out there? I think we should just remove the gates.
I mean, I see their use. We talk about this all the time. There are certain places where they're handy, obviously. Airports, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Big commercial buildings. So like in Toronto, like we have our own version of Wall Street, right? It's Bay Street. There's all the banks, all the law firms, all the big accounting firms.
Yeah.
They all sort of reside in one area of downtown Toronto. And I get that they want some level of security and protection, that they need the gates. There's a lot of monthly parking that goes on. So the in and outs.
So where's the national government? Is it in Toronto? or-
Ottawa.
Ottawa.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Have you ever
they
been to
have gates.
Halifax?
I just went to Halifax for the first time.
Yeah, I was up
I
there.
loved it.
Yeah, it was.
Loved it.
I was there in June and it was snowing.
Oh, well, that's
Yeah, but it was. I
Welcome to
love it.
Canada.
Yeah, I love it. It's way up there.
It's a beautiful city. And it
Yeah.
was like, okay, so one of the things I love about having done this for the last 11 years is there's been a lot of travel, and I feel
Right.
so blessed to have had that experience in my life. But don't you find that you land in certain cities and you're like, all right, I'm home. This is pretty cool.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
other
do.
cities, you're like,
You're like,
Nah.
I could just stay on this plane. I'm good. I don't think I need to get off.
Oh,
Yeah.
of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Halifax was one where I was like, I like this city.
So the event planning, back to the event planning. So was that kind of cool during, so you had mentioned that the event planning period was kind of when your kids were younger.
Yeah.
So it was probably kind of, your kids got to be involved, right?
Some of the ones
Some
that I
of
did.
them?
I did some charity stuff that was really interesting that they loved. There was some. A lot
Did they
of
get
it
to go
was
to the events with
some
you?
of the events they got to go to. For the most part, probably not. I mean, when they were really little and I was at the venues, no, because I was like in and out of other people's things. But when I was doing my own, maybe some of them. But for the most part, it was just corporate stuff. You go in, you make sure the room looks nice and all the stuff that you've planned is there. Listen, it taught me patience. It taught me how to put out fires. That's
Which
really
you
what
need in
events
parking.
are, right? Like
Yeah.
it really is that. So I grew a lot and learned a lot. But when I kind of hit that, I was 40 when I got into this business, and I was just like needing a change in my life. Like I guess my kids were, kind of getting up there in age. They
How
weren't
many kids
babies
do you
anymore.
have?
I have 2 girls.
2 girls.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they're college age?
Both of them, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I have one's turning 21 and one is 18
so you're empty nester.
this year for the first time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
How was that?
I can't decide if I love it or hate it. I'm torn.
Yeah,
there's a part of me that's like empty inside, and then there's this other piece that's like, just enjoy it. Like, stop. Like,
I think the first couple of years, it's a little, and then it's kind of, then you develop a different kind of relationship with your children. And, and you transition into a different, and then it becomes,
They came home this week. They were home. They had a reading week. They were home for the week, and it was so nice to be together, all of us. Like, it was special.
It really makes you appreciate like your family time. I think just a little, like not just a little bit more, but a whole lot more.
Yeah, and they're pretty cool. Like, they're pretty. They're good girls.
Did they go locally, or did they go?
One is in Montreal.
Okay.
And Montreal.
Yeah, she's living her best life in Montreal. She actually was in Amsterdam last year on an exchange for 6 months of the year. So that was pretty cool too.
So when you were there in April, was she there or March? Oh, that's cool.
That's right.
Yeah. That's why it was like amazing. We got to go and visit. Yeah. And then the other one is 2 hours outside of Toronto.
Spilling beer over here.
So excited over there. Amsterdam.
I'm thinking about going back to Amsterdam.
Which is what I think that was the first time we met. Was in Amsterdam.
Yes, your hair was curly.
Amsterdam was fun.
Because it's really humid there.
It was humid.
Here it's bone
Danny's
dry.
got different looks,
Yeah, I have curly hair too. I never wear my hair curly.
Yeah.
Most people in parking would not know that, and I actually have curly hair also.
I can't like when it's very humid. I just let it do its thing.
It's the same in the summer. It's curly every day.
Oh yeah.
I had curly hair too until half
I
of it
saying
went
that.
away.
I do remember you saying that. But I think we're going to need photo evidence.
Yeah.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Fact check that. So
I was a fro.
That's homework. That's homework for you.
Incredible.
Hated it. Anyway. It's a different show.
Yeah, that's not for today.
Yeah.
So do your daughters think what you do is? Do they like what you do? Are they interested in what you do? Is it something that they would be interested in an
Are they
industry
going
coming
to parking university?
No.
Yeah.
Doubtful. No. I think that
There's no major of parking?
No, there's no major in parking. I've had my, we've got our majors and I've got my master's in parking at this point.
Although you can tell, actually parking's a great undercover because you can tell when you're on that plane in that awkward moment and somebody goes, "Oh, parking." And then you'll have the opposite conversation with somebody else and they'll be like, "Oh my God, yeah." And they'll start, and then you're like, "Yeah, this person gets it."
Yeah, exactly.
Right? They're in business, they understand how things work, right?
Exactly.
So,
my older one is very artistic, creative. She's a great writer. She will not be anywhere near.
She doesn't want to get creative in the parking.
I don't think the business world. But my
yeah.
younger one is like, she loves it because she loves business and entrepreneurship, and so she's very fascinated by kind of what we're doing, and she like stares at Michael with big wide eyes. She loves his entrepreneurial spirit. So
that's cool.
It's buried in him. Yeah.
Well, and I think that's a great leeway into my next question, because from when you started 11 years ago, when you first stepped into this industry, where technology was then in our industry is nowhere near where we are today. And I feel like you got, like, HONK has been such a huge part of the innovation.
Thank you.
Of where we are today as an industry from a technology perspective. And so I want to hear your thoughts on, like, I think that we are one of the fastest growing, like, innovators in the technology world. I personally think that, but I would love to hear your thoughts around that.
Yeah, listen, we've taken an archaic business and really transformed it over the course of these 11 years. I remember specifically being, there was a payments company. So when we first came in, it was like, obviously, HonkMobile and whatever, all the standards, the huge.
Right.
And there was this one other company, and I can't remember their name now. And the guy, we were at our first conference where we were exhibiting, and the guy came over to us. He was such an asshole. And he said, "There's too many of us in here. You're not going to make it. Like, good luck to you." Like, no word of a lie. And that's so not a parking thing to do, right? Like, everyone's so friendly in this industry, so kind, so welcoming, so generous with their time and their mentorship and all those things. And this guy was such an asshole. And we were like, "No, you're not going to scare us, buddy. Like, no thanks." And so we went on to do some cool stuff over the years. Even to this day, we are far from a startup. It's 11 years later.
Was that a U.S. show or was it a Canada?
No, it was Pi.
Oh.
It was Pi.
Okay.
And I can't remember his name. I'll remember it and
But
tell you
I feel like that
after.
was such an 11 years ago thing to do.
Yeah, maybe. But we were just like, nah. That's not going to be how this goes.
Thankfully, you guys.
Yeah,
you
I was like, honestly, like 11 years later, we are not a startup in any way, shape, or form. We have a big company. We have tons of people working for us. And we still have that startup mentality, that grit. We still sit around the office and yell and scream at one another across the room. Yeah. Like we will sit in a boardroom and process.
You yell and scream at each other?
Across the room. It's like, hey, I think we should do this. No. Or we get in an argument about something. Or it's still that has that vibe, right? It's not like it's structured, and we enjoy that energy behind that.
We never yell and scream at each other in this office.
It's quiet as a mouse over here.
I'm sure that's why you have
bullshit.
I'm sure that's why you have walls here. For that reason.
Yeah, there's no way Dro is happy about that comment.
We still yell and scream without these walls. Anyway.
Yeah,
it's called a phone.
And anyway, so then, obviously we started off as an app, and that's where we were, in that space. And then we started to realize that who we really needed to compete with it was like right around before COVID. There was about a year before that we didn't really want to compete with the apps as much as we wanted to figure out how we got the people who were using the machines, because the pay stations, because everybody was like, you were going to gravitate towards an app, but there were still like 50% in some places that were using these pay stations. So who were those people and why weren't they using apps, and what did we need to do for them? And that's when we kind of sat around the boardroom and discovered the idea of using the QR code for guest checkout. We launched that in June at IPMI. And then obviously in March, the world went to hell. And then, QR codes had this renaissance. So the idea of paying using QR, people were starting to use them on menus and understand what they were and how to work it. And so it was a game changer for us, as horrible as that time was for everybody, and especially in our industry. God, we get shivers thinking about it.
You entered that market?
But it was like, we were in the space before, and we were just like, people can pay using this, and that's what's going to get that person to capture that person that's going to be using the pay station. So that's where we headed. And then we started to just kind of play off of that. So then it was like, okay, so we're in this pandemic. What's going to happen after? We're going to go to this hybrid parking. So we're going to develop a virtual scratch card, right? Like I go to the gym, I buy a 5-pack. Why can't I buy a 10-pack of parking? Like there's all kinds of ways that we can use this. Then it was like, let's expand on our permitting solutions, and let's grow this platform so that it looks like a payment suite for parking operators that they can pick and choose different pieces of the puzzle.
Right. And I remember, I do remember, because I was in operations during the pandemic, and I was in the operator that I worked for. We worked almost exclusively with HONK, and anything that we went to HONK with, where we were like, hey, we need to get people parking. Can we do it this way? You guys were one of the only technology solution companies that said, yeah, we'll do whatever. Like, let's hop on a phone. Let's hop on a call. Like, we will accommodate however we can. If we can do it, we'll do it. If we can't, like, let us come up with a solution. We'll build it.
Thank you.
And we did like a flex pass, like a multi pass. Like, we were able to implement so many things, which I think ultimately saved a lot of our parking operations, because we had the flexibility for our customers to do so.
We love it. We love inventing and coming up with different ways of molding our system, right? Because it's like we've got the basics there and everything is in existence. It's like, how can we tweak it and shape it to change for operators so that they can accommodate their customers a little bit better and a little bit easier and make life better for them?
Well, you make it easy, right? You don't make it complicated. You're like, that's really complicated. Why don't we do it this way?
We always say it's just parking.
It's just parking.
That's right.
But there are a lot of...
The best parking experience is what, Dani?
The one forgotten.
The one never remembered.
Right. Same.
Yeah. So it's interesting as I sit here and listen. It's kind of like I remember the meter box.
Right.
And I remember sitting and straightening money for hours on end, putting it under your, your leg. And it's interesting to me because the pay station came out and that was like, oh my God, people are going to get receipts. But when I actually sit here and listen to you, I think about it, the pay station renaissance didn't last very long.
No.
I mean, when you really put numbers and timeline together, wow, what a short, and that was like the greatest thing since sliced bread.
Yeah.
And now it's like, I see pay stations on a lot, honestly, and it's like, why?
Why?
Yeah.
I know I'm gonna piss some people off.
Well, no,
but
yeah,
I'm not trying to, but I mean,
it's the facts.
Come on,
right?
nobody. Nobody. It's so inconvenient anymore. So
it is. Yeah. It's just the fact of what that is, right? Like you don't listen. I get that people want to have one or two around because there's people who just that's what they like and they want to accommodate for that.
There's a demographic out there that's not as sophisticated. That's right. But that's going away quick too. Just
university campuses, like they're all getting rid of them. Like,
yeah, you have to. You have to. I mean, now it doesn't matter where you go if you're. So I think people are having. I mean, some people in their everyday lives are having to be forced into that technology. And so parking is like, why we're, it's
now we're moving
very
even further away from all of that, right? Now it's like the idea of drive in, drive out, and all this other stuff that's going on in the industry that we're not going to
scan anymore.
Right? We're all sitting back and going, okay, what's happening? Like it's like it's moving quickly, and it's cool. I like to see it though.
Yeah, we were just I mean, I remember during, before, and during COVID, and kind of throughout the pandemic, talking about. I think gates are going to be gone. I know there's some people that still think it's a false sense of security. I mean, I really believe that. There's no security with gates. It may slow people down, but there's other ways to accomplish that.
I feel like it slows some people down, and others it just.
I mean, there's still people out there that think a roll-up door is like security. Those are the most unsafe places on the planet because it gives a false sense of security. No, really.
Well, I think that's
like
one
if
of
I wanted to get into a garage, I'm getting in. Well,
and that's one of my anxieties around parking in a parking garage, or especially the ones with roll gates, because I've operated assets where the roll gates don't work, they malfunction, and then you have hundreds of people stuck in a parking garage, and that's just the first barrier. You get that open, you still have a gate.
Oh my god!
And so it's just like obstacle after obstacle.
My wife was 28 years in multifamily, and they have roll-up gates, and there's nothing secure about roll-up.
See those are very much anymore, though.
Yeah.
In Toronto,
or the roll-up doors.
Yeah, I like some, but very few.
Yeah,
I feel like those have
a lot
gone
of
by
like
the
commercial
wayside.
buildings. Normally,
they do, but it's kind of like I mean, honestly, people thought it was secure, but
I think where my kids get embarrassed about me, just thinking back to like the parking, what your kids think, is like when we're traveling and I'm taking pictures of
all
parking.
I know, and you do it on vacation, right?
Like vacation.
Oh my God, there
like,
goes John. We're in Cabo.
I'm like, that's where they're like, Mom, I think we're going to draw the line here. This is ridiculous. But I'm laughing. Like my parents, like I grew up with two parents who were therapists at a time when they were doing like really new age therapy where nobody was like understanding that. And then Oprah came along and sort of opened up everybody's eyes to this world. So I was mortified.
Dr. Phil.
Right? No, they were like long before Dr. Phil doing all that stuff. Like, but I was always so embarrassed by it and like didn't understand like what that was about. Now I think about my kids being embarrassed by me taking pictures of parking lots.
Oh,
like,
I look for the unique stuff too. When I was in Spain, in Barcelona, there was literally a garage with this little shelf, and it had like a phone as the intercom, like one of the old phones that it was just classic.
I always say,
hang on guys, just one sec. I just got to take this picture.
Yeah, always. And I always say, I'm like, if someone, like I lose my phone and someone finds it and they're able to get into it, they're going to think I have this like really weird fetish. They're going to be like, this woman is obsessed with parking, like these parking signs and these parking kiosks. Like, I can only imagine because that's all
that one's merchandised really nicely.
Yeah.
Quick. Like, what am I doing?
Like, what is this? Like 5 parking spaces? Yeah, license plates. So it could be like, man, this lady has got a weird fetish.
Okay, so you guys are on the cutting edge of technology. So
I'd like to think so.
What's the new buzz? Like, what's the next 5 years look like for Honk?
That's a very good question. Listen, I think that we're continuing to advance our current stack and figuring out tweaking it. It's just constantly being innovated upon. we always kind of find little nuances.
It's like a child that you're raising.
It is.
Yeah. Most people don't realize that about software.
Is. Yeah.
You don't buy it and then walk away.
No, you can't.
And then 3 years later, you're like, oh my gosh, it's a constant molding, raising,
really can tell
nurturing.
When somebody has walked away from it, right?
Yeah.
Like, and there's people in our industry for sure that I look at their products sometimes and I'm like, you got bored, huh?
Yeah.
Like, come on, you got to go back to that. Like, and that's what we try and do all the time is just try and go back to it and say, and we listen to our customers and they say, exactly what you're saying before. Like, I want to do this with my, with our garage or our lots and whatever. And then we're like, okay, well, let's try this. Maybe we can develop this and make it work. And so we're constantly just trying to figure out how we can advance our existing stack. And then, playing around with some AI stuff, the buzzword, the big buzzword bingo, let's play it. But it's a thing. I mean, we can't turn our heads away from it. So we're looking at that, looking at some dynamic pricing, which I honestly feel like no one's been able to do well. And
I'm glad you brought that up because my side of the bit, or what I do in our sector of the business, there's a lot of regulation right now, or regulators. We've created a lot of tension.
Yeah.
And it's not because, it's just because of the volume and parking's changed. So no longer do you have a 12-hour enforcement day, right? Or at the very tops, you were 16. I mean, nobody's driving around in an LPR car or whatever for 24/7, right? So it's changed. And so, 3 years ago or 4 years ago, when we started looking at the data, it's like, holy shit, from midnight to 7 in the morning, like, who the hell knew that this parking lot had that much activity, right? And so that, so now your volume goes up, the regulation goes up. And so in dealing with some of the different state, governments, and we love them all. Bullshit. But they either get it or they don't get it. But I would love to know how dynamic pricing is actually going to work. I mean, in a hotel, if you go in the back of your door in the room, it's got like a set price and it's high.
Yeah.
Right. And so I'd love to know how the first regulator is going to deal with Dani, who pulled in, and I pulled in right after her, but she's paying 20 and I'm paying 40.
Yeah.
And how does the sign play into that? And so there's going to be a real, we're getting bumps for what we do. And these are people that don't pay and aren't compliant or expired. I can't imagine, and some people say there's people doing dynamic pricing.
Not really.
I'd love to see where.
Yeah. I want to say San Francisco maybe did something along those lines that I think what they did is
really?
I think potentially, and I could be wrong on this, but I think what they did is like, the lots that were kind of like off into the distance were for the city mark. Those like the pricing is very different than the ones that are sort of in the core, and I think that's how they were playing out the dynamic pricing, not necessarily around timing, like or maybe certain times of day. The certain lots get more expensive.
And
than
I think
others.
it depends on. I do think it depends on the type of the parking type, right? Like if you're doing daily and monthly, I'm not so sure, but we do it very successfully in the event world.
I was just going to say event pricing is dynamic pricing when you think about it.
But we, and one venue in particular.
Because you're like physically changing the signs as you're.
Or not.
No, I mean, that goes along with this goes back to us talking about integrations, open APIs, and people playing nice in the sandbox. And there are some technologies that don't want to play nice with others, and it's keeping us from doing it. So a lot of the dynamic pricing in the event world right now is done manually. It's a lot of manual work. Oof. And we're really trying to figure out, I think that there are solutions out there like the Awkwards of the world where we can successfully do dynamic pricing from an event standpoint. But there are certain solutions and there are certain aggregators who don't want to invest the time into types of integrations for reasons unknown to us, right? They're just telling us that they're not going to do it. Others are willing to, but that still keeps us from accomplishing a really big goal for our client, which is, essentially helping them increase the bottom line and get when you have only so much space to park people in. Your space is valuable. It's so valuable, and dynamically pricing depending on the event, the time of day, your peak times of like ingress or, whatever. That's very important.
Is your dynamic pricing then as sophisticated as if I pull in and my buddy behind me, we could pay different prices?
Probably.
Really? You're doing that now?
It's very manual. It's like, it's literally someone and not even.
It's based on the time of day though too, right? Like at 6 o'clock, the prices change over.
Our drive up rates change.
So you change
throughout
on
the night?
Yeah.
So you change on the fly based on the traffic that you're taking in.
Correct.
That's a little different because you're manually out there and you can do it. I'm talking about a surface lot on a Friday night with nobody there
leading up to the event though. Dynamic pricing can be done. Like we do it well on an event basis. I'm not talking just like your Friday night going downtown, like daily.
Friday night, baby.
Like your transient parking. Not
remember those days.
It's Friday night.
Now it's like Friday night.
Now I'm like
8 p.m. in bed. Yeah.
Friday night is the night where you're like exhausted and you're like, we're not doing anything.
I can't even on a Friday night. I cannot believe. Like that's the funniest part when my kids are home and I'm watching them go out and I'm like, oh my God. It's like 11 o'clock. They haven't left yet. I'm like, I remember that.
I think I told someone earlier, I was like, yeah, my plan on Friday night is to be in bed by 8 p.m.
Oh, it feels so good.
Doesn't it?
When I find out that we got like plans on Friday night, it's like, are you serious? Wow. Saturday night though, Saturday night's good. You go to bed early Friday night.
Good. Yeah. It's still good. Yeah.
Once I'm home because I'm very rarely home. You travel probably as much as I do, Kacey. And once I'm home, I am locked in my condo for the eternity until I leave again. Which is just a few days. So it's like 2 days max. But
wow, you travel a lot. That's a lot.
I know it is a lot.
Yeah.
But hey, you know what? I asked for this. Like you said, like this industry has taken me places I never thought I would go.
100%.
There are some cities.
So what's the best place you've been?
That's so hard to say.
I want to know what's your favorite and your least favorite?
New Orleans. Wow.
I don't want to insult anyone's city, but I do love New Orleans.
Wow.
I love
so you're loving the conferences because they're there every
New
time
York's
we
my
turn
favorite.
around.
New York's my ultimate. Like I could live in New York City. Like
too.
my husband could never, but
Yes.
I 100% could pick up and move to New York. I do. I love New Orleans. I find it wacky and cool and just
the music, the food,
just the vibe, the food,
I love it.
Everything about it. I think it's so great.
I'm with you on that though. New York is my number one. I could live in New York. I'm going to live in New York at some point.
It's
Really?
the best.
I'm not going to own a car, and I know that's like an oxymoron for our industry, but I'm getting rid of my car. I'm going to walk everywhere.
Brooklyn, Queens. Where are you gonna...
It's so funny because I drove to the I went into the office today, which is just a few minutes from here, John, from our studio.
I can throw a football.
It took me an hour and a half to get to the office, and I'm 12 miles from the office.
You got to time it right. You just come in at wait till like 8:30.
That's literally when I was supposed to be in office. Anyways, in New York, I can take a 20-minute train ride from Midtown out to my arena, which is on Long Island. Be there in 28 minutes.
It's the best.
Long Island.
I don't need a car. I don't need to waste time sitting.
Where's John Bissert when we need him?
It's and New York is the most interesting. Like we've always thought, can we break into the New York parking world? And it is. Ooh. It's a beast in and of itself.
You guys
it's
just
its own little space. Oh yeah.
You just did.
There we go.
What did you do?
Very, very small, but it's still a big win.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
New York space. But I love Vegas is my least.
I agree.
Oh God.
It's like,
I find it exhausting. And I've had some fun ass nights in Vegas. Like it's a great time. It can be, but it's not for me.
Vegas is like
honestly, I liked the Columbus.
I loved Columbus.
And I'm looking forward to Louisville.
Me too.
The Bourbon Trail.
Yeah.
And I'd like to go to Montana for a conference.
For a conference in Montana?
Let's get some blue sky and some big sky, whatever.
I love the smaller ones personally.
And why don't we have one in Canada?
Let's go. Oh, you know what? It was IPMI was supposed to be in Toronto. And then COVID hit and they couldn't do it.
Well, you got to convince them to take it back.
Full disclosure, though, with our industry, they'd probably lose half the people with DUIs that couldn't.
That is a great
I mean, honestly, most people don't know that about Canada. I only know it because like I told you earlier, I had a friend that got turned away in Vancouver, and his DUI was like 10 years prior.
I think a lot of people would get actually deported back to the U.S.
When I first got into this industry, I was like, I would drink and have fun or whatever, but I wasn't a big, huge, anyway, like the first few conferences that I went to, maybe the first like 5 or 6, and I would come home and my husband would be like, what the hell happened to you?
I know. You're in a coma for 2 days.
Parking happened to me. I was like a bird let out of the cage. I was like, oh, this is so fun. I can't do it. And I was like gross by the time I got home. I'd lost 10 pounds. I hadn't eaten in days. Like,
I know, you get home and you're
like, what is happening? And then I could barely talk to him for, he's like, oh, I'm sorry. No, this wasn't going to happen.
It's like a full-on recovery, like kind of still for me.
You're in a coma.
Yes.
I'm like, I reevaluate my entire life after I come home. I'm like, those 5 happy hours definitely did not need to happen.
No, what was I thinking?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
I like how you describe it, like a bird let out of a cage.
I was a bit of a bird let out of the cage. Yeah, my kids were still sort of little, and I was like, oh, this is fun.
Yeah.
I'm having a good time.
I do like, I will say, I'm with you on Vegas being my least favorite city. I just think it's really depressing.
Okay,
but
all the organizers, do you hear that?
No, but
Vegas,
I do love SWAPTA. Like SWAPTA is one of my favorite
I'm going
conferences.
for the first time after this.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
it's one of my favorite conferences, and I'm really sad that I'm not going this year, but it's one of my favorite conferences.
I'm looking forward to it.
It's like, and because it's old, it's
I've never
it's
been.
Fremont. It's amazing.
The problem too is because I have an event planning background, I go to all these conferences and I have opinions.
You're judging. You got the checklist. You're like, oh my God.
Some of the people who run them
Wow,
probably want to kill me because they get the survey comes in afterwards, and I'm like, well, actually,
they get your novel.
Let's discuss the food, okay? Do you really want to,
So anyway. They look forward to your surveys.
Probably not. I try and be like helpful, but
they should just avoid it, and they should just ask for your recommendations beforehand.
Yeah,
and I feel like you got some really valuable input.
I had, a lot of years doing events. I feel like there's certain things that we could be doing better.
Year? We've got we're going to Louisville.
Yep.
With
for
IPMI.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where is NPA?
I hope we go back to New Orleans.
Indy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You sound so excited.
Oh
yeah.
It'll probably be the first one I miss until.
We'll be there.
No, you know what? Listen, I love the smaller conferences. I think they're easier to. I really like it when there's like 2 bars and everyone's hanging out at the same places and you're all connected. Vegas is really hard with these things because everyone's all over the place.
You don't see,
and you don't have that.
See people.
Do you remember ever going to the ones at the Gaylord hotels?
I do,
right?
yeah.
And like as silly as they were, because you're in these weird environments with this dome, and I don't know, those hotels are ridiculous.
But everybody's all in one place.
But you're all in one place, and you're together, and you're seeing each other for 3 days in a row, and you get to really know people and talk to people and have these amazing conversations. And I think that's probably what should, and I get that, it's easy to send people to Vegas because everyone can get there and it's whatever. So I understand why they do it. But I do really enjoy the smaller ones. I think it's really nice.
I thought the Gaylord, they were on like a cycle every couple of years. They'd go to the different ones. So there was Dallas, there was Orlando, I think there was Nashville, there was several, right? So, although Nashville probably would have been better downtown. At the convention center, in my opinion, because downtown had so much to offer.
Nashville's cool.
That would be fun.
Oh, yeah.
So we're like in operations, it's not, I mean, when I was in operations, it wasn't a thing to go to parking conferences. So my first experience was when I moved out of operations into tech. That's when I first started experiencing the parking conferences. And I was like, this is such an opportunity missed.
Listen, it's a warm, loving community, and we all get to know each other. And then you really like as big of a world as this parking world is as small as it is, right?
Very,
we all
very,
have this like, and again, when I first came into the industry, I was like one of the few women that was floating around, and I was like, all right, let's go. I can, I'm happy to sit and talk to you and this person. That like, there's just you get to have these really interesting different people.
So if you had to give 3 bullet points for pros of the industry and then 3 cons, let's start with the cons.
The cons of the parking industry.
Like if you told someone
if you were trying to, tell Dani and I were, young coming up and we're thinking about parking.
Like the reasons why you shouldn't join the industry.
Yeah. What are the 3 bullet points that you might say, hey, be careful about this?
I think that in the next couple of years, we're going to see a lot of consolidation. And I think that
interesting.
As robust as the industry's been, I think that's going to change a lot. I think it's going to get smaller, and more of a monopoly on certain ends. I that's my fourth thought on that. So I think it's going to be hard to break into this space. I think that technology is going to take over a lot of sort of the certain jobs that we may not need people for much longer. So I think that the tech, the AI, again, back to the buzzword, but I do think it's going to start to replace humans on some level in some weird ways, and I think in parking especially. So that part concerns me. I see the consolidation changing.
So it's interesting that you say that, because when I went over to Amsterdam, and it was my first time at Intertraffic, but I had I was with people that have been going for years. And so I was told the parking has been shrinking.
Yes.
So the parking space for the show has been shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. And the mobility, tech, all the other things associated has been growing.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like parking's getting shrunk right down to the little corner of the.
Well, and I have a question. Do you think that because to your point, you're gonna see a lot of consolidation? We think we're gonna see a lot of consolidation. Do you think it's because now that there is actually there's the spotlight on our industry from these bigger tech companies, right? Now we got, the acquisition between Metropolis and SP Plus for $1 billion is now piquing the interest.
1.6, I think.
Is now piquing the interest of these bigger tech companies who are outside of parking and not necessarily in our industry.
Yeah, no question about it. I always thought, people would always say, why hasn't Google entered the space? What? And I'm like, oh, because they've done their research. Having now gone through this for 11 years, it is so fragmented, our industry, right? It's completely, there's little tiny operators and big, huge operators, and they all operate differently. At HONK, we call them, so everyone's a special snowflake, right? So everyone has different wants and needs. You can't penetrate this business. Even as Google, you're still going to need feet on the street. You still have to pound the pavement for that stuff.
They're waiting for it to consolidate.
They're waiting for it to consolidate, 100%.
And
that's exactly what's starting. You're seeing it, right? Metropolis bought up SP Plus. Who knows who else is next on their list to buy up? Then you've got, Spaces. They're moving in on this as well. So, Jerry's an old parking guy who's been around. I don't mean old in that sense, but he's been doing this a long time. He knows what he's doing, right?
Right. I love highlighting the
central
parking
guys.
alum.
Yeah, I heard you say that. Yeah. It runs deep. That's for sure. But listen, so I would say that to me is the bigger piece of this. I think that's going to be a game changer. Again, you guys, there's not a lot of you doing what you do. Eventually that's, when we were at Intertraffic, what I noticed from a mobile payment perspective, we were there 2 years ago and there was a bunch of people on the floor. This year, Easy Park was the only one that I saw.
Yeah.
Right. And again, talk about consolidation. They just went and bought up everybody. Right.
Yep.
And are continuing to penetrate into the North American market. So I see that, that's the piece that I question and that scares me a little bit, that I'm like, okay, where are we headed?
So consolidation.
Yeah.
That's one.
Cons.
Well, that's one. One honk.
Guys, I'm having a hard time thinking of cons.
We can switch over to the pros, right? I think the pros are a lot easier than the cons, which is great for our industry because
I really do. I'm having a hard time coming up with the cons of this industry. I think it's I think it's easy to break into. I think, listen, you know this as well as I do. Once you're in, and I heard Tucker say that also, like, you kind of don't get out. Like, I'll never forget being, on all those Zooms and webinars and, like, during that time where you sat and listened to people, and I sat on a million of them, and it was like everyone would introduce themselves. And it was, I've been in parking 40 years. I've been in parking 20 years. I've been in parking 10 years. It was like, no one said I've been in parking for 6 months and and I'm out. Like, it's for whatever reason, this captivates you and carries you in, and you get held here. I will say one of the cons that I find a little bit is because we're a bit of a smaller industry, I do see people bopping around a lot.
Yep.
So going from company to company within parking, I always find that a little bit strange in the sense that, I don't
think people realize how, they might, but it's a very small industry.
It's very small.
Yeah. And, some of the things, that you do affect for a while. So, people's perceptions or whatever. And so that's one of them, bouncing around, doing
a little bit of the bouncing around. I noticed that for sure. Like, there's you get to a conference, you're like, oh, he was in that booth last year. Well, he's over here now.
He's over
right?
there. Yeah.
Yeah.
It happens. Yeah.
And it isn't like,
but I think that goes along with some of the generational stuff that we're dealing. Like, people don't stay at companies a long time anymore.
What does they say? You'll have 7 jobs in the course of your lifetime minimum.
Yeah. So, and it just keeps getting.
I was going to say, it's easy to do in our industry because it's such a competitive industry in a way. Like, someone sees someone really good and they're like, I think that it's just all about you, your character, your values, your morals, of you wanting to be somewhere good and not going somewhere when someone offers you a higher salary.
I think a pro, not a lot of ego.
Wow.
In this industry.
Okay.
I find that. Like, you can talk to the C-suites and, sometimes someone can have a bit of a chip on their shoulder, but for the most part, no one likes them. So it's like, right? Like, that guy no one likes. Like,
right.
I generally.
That was the guy that told you guys, what.
That guy was such
I'm like, where is he now? We need to research where he's at now. He's probably not even in the industry anymore. If that was his attitude.
God, what was his name?
I know. It's okay.
We're gonna have to unpack this.
I'll remember it after. You'll help me.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think not a lot of ego. I think
that's the first I've ever heard that.
I like that though. I think I agree with you on that. I do. I do agree with you on that.
I've been in it longer, so
you're not phased though. I know your view, and like you're just not phased. Like, you would never take anyone seriously if they came to you with ego. Like, that just wouldn't be a thing.
We're talking like the last 11 years. Like I said, I think the industry has changed so much in the last even 20 years, and a lot of new blood, if you will, has come into the industry in the last 11, 15 years.
Right.
Where it's just it gives it a completely different feel. And I get that. Like, I haven't been in the industry as long as you have, Kacey, but I agree with you.
There's a lot of great. I can agree when you start talking, and from the tech side, when you start dealing with like the Ethan Glass and there's a bunch of young startup people that have been very successful. Yeah. And I have to agree. You're right. They don't, there's not a lot
I met those guys at
Matt with Off Street.
Yeah.
There's just really nice people that I totally agree.
Well, it's funny because I remember like coming in at the beginning and we were like on that tech side, and there was this, all of a sudden I could tell there was this young tech explosion in parking. And I think some of the old guard was looking around going, what the hell is happening here? And they were throwing these big splashy parties and having a lot of fun and spending some money. And like, people were like looking around and saying like, this is not who we are, right? We're old school parking guys. Like, what are you talking about? And then all of a sudden they started to embrace it. And I think, so
and then they started drinking.
Exactly. Someone else's booze.
Yeah.
And then they paved the way for the Off Street guys and the Accra boys. I think that they allowed for, I look at like, give props to Alex Israel and that group from Park Me in those early days where that's what they were doing. And Mark Lawrence at Spot Hero, and they were young and they were shaking up an industry.
And still are,
and still are for sure. But now they're kind of the old guard now. And I think they were having fun at that time.
If they're the old guard,
Think
that
about
means
it. They are.
Fucking dinosaur.
Well, yeah.
Anyway.
But I think that's, you've seen a lot of change there for sure. I have.
Absolutely.
So definitely.
Okay, so that's a honk.
2.
That's 2. So
Ego.
not a lot of ego.
A lot of great mentorship, I would say. A lot of really good mentorship. It's available to you. So if you're looking for it, you can find it. I know you, me, you, like it's available. People in this industry are very happy to give their time for some mentorship. So I think that's a positive.
I think people should. Yeah, I think that's a great point to bring up because I think sometimes people are afraid to like reach out. And I think when we did the Alan interview, one of the things he said was, don't be afraid to reach out.
Yeah. Mentorship.
And, to somebody. And I'll say it here, reach out.
Yeah.
I'm happy to
and
help.
even
Me too. Same thing.
What Kevin's doing, right? With what is it?
Parking Today.
Yeah, Parking Today, but the at Pi, the
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 contest.
Dragon's Den, not the whatever,
Yeah.
it's Shark Tank kind of thing.
Yeah.
I forget what it's called. Sorry, Kevin. But where there's a whole mentor-mentee aspect to that, right? And he's bringing people together from every walk of the industry.
We're supposed to have that
to
winner
connect
on the cast.
Yeah.
Well, Women in Parking has a good mentorship program. I think IPMI does. There's a lot of.
So how would some woman get into women parking today or women in parking? Yeah.
Women in Parking.
How do they go about that?
Women in Parking Today.
I think they just get in touch with them and sign up, and then they can.
Who do they get in touch with?
There's
You're not a billboard. Yeah.
No.
It's
through
you can probably
MPA.
go to the MPA
they gotta go to the MPA
website.
website and they can find it there.
Okay.
I mean, you could probably just Google women in parking and it'll
come up. Yeah.
It'll come up.
Yeah. I think there's a couple other women's organizations that are starting to pop up. I'm hearing some rumblings behind the scenes. So I think there's some other cool stuff that's about
that's great. Yeah.
That's about to show up for women in the industry also. I think when I first got into this business, it wasn't great for women. It was not ideal. I think that's changed a lot. It's much more welcoming and comfortable. And I think that's been great.
So that's another pro.
That's a pro. Yeah. I would say con. So I think that one of the places that we can do better at some of the conferences maybe is getting a little bit better with the sessions. I find the educational stuff is not as. Sometimes it can just be like
dated.
It's a bit dated.
Yeah.
I was at.
I won't name what conference I was at.
No, me neither. I think it's across the board.
It was horrible. Somebody was talking about how AI will eventually come in, and I'm in the back of the room going, "We're already here. We've been here a couple of years."
Right.
Well,
right.
I mean, come on, man.
Right. Yeah. I was at a conference a couple of years ago, or PIPTA last year, and by accident, someone bailed from their speaking session and they quickly pulled together. I wrote a piece about this in Parking Today because I was so blown away. They quickly pulled a piece together about vulnerability in the workplace. And we all sat in this room and they had the panel and they all kind of Carmen and Joni and they got into it and just had this like brilliant, beautiful conversation. And then they kind of put it out to the audience and everybody started like feeding back like, yeah, like once I was at this job and I was upset and nobody was like wanting to be okay with that and And we just had this like beautiful hour of talking about what it's like to be vulnerable in the workplace and what that means. And I thought it was so poignant and so important. And I felt like people walked away from that really with something as opposed to me talking about, it's like stuff I've talked about a million times over. Right. And I think that we can open the door to some really interesting conversations about mental health and workplace stuff. And I really think that these conferences can be not just the leadership forums. I think that as a whole, they can be really beneficial to people if we opened up something like one session or, I don't know. I think that's a con. I think we can do better there. I think the educational sessions don't just need to be about your gate and how it opens and closes.
Life.
Exactly.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
We talk about parking all the time.
That's what we're trying to do with this show. It's like we don't want to get on here and just monotone about parking.
Well, we've had a lot of we bring people on and we've had a lot of vulnerable moments with a lot of our guests, and I think it's really exposing the shedding some light on the realness behind who we are, who you are, how we got here, why we're still here,
Absolutely.
and it's hard. It is not easy. It has been it's been a journey, and people think, oh, you fly, Dani, you fly all around, you fly all around the world. you live this lavish life. And I'm like, it is, I still park cars. Like I fly to my venues and I help in operations.
And those
have a
hotel
light
rooms
on.
get lonely. Those hotel rooms get lonely.
Not only lonely, but have you ever stayed in a gross one?
Yes, but
they get lonely. I don't know. I'll have to ask Mike Drow about the gross ones.
It's about
it's
like
120 a night.
Is that what he stays?
No,
in?
I don't. I'm just.
I
no, he stays at
I was
Marriott's,
like, John, there's no way.
Good.
But like going back, talking about the vulnerabilities and like
But the cheap Marriott's.
the sacrifices.
Joe and I have had some fights.
Yeah.
It's taken for a lot of people to get here, right? To get to where we are now, and it hasn't been easy, and a lot of people don't understand that, but no one talks about it. All the therapy sessions that we all have probably gone through,
of course.
Yeah, and so I think I love that. I love. I think
listen,
that you're
again,
right.
I come from a therapeutic background, right? So what my parents always taught me was you take your shit with you no matter where you go. So you go to the office and you have a coworker that gets under your skin. Most likely that is more on you than it is on them, right? Like if there's really somebody like that's your childhood stuff, you're bringing it with you. You know, you've had a bad day, you had a fight with your husband in the morning, you take it into the office, you're sitting there, you're in it. Your boss bothers you, like you can feel yourself getting triggered. Like there's all kinds of reasons why we take our stuff with. We are who we are, and we bring it. We don't leave that at the door. You just don't, right? Or you go in the bathroom.
Interesting.
You've cried in the bathroom before because you just really can't take it that day. Like, and that's okay. Like it used to be like shameful. God forbid you're having a fight with somebody at the office and you start to cry a little bit because you're emotional. Like that used to be a part of shame. Now it shouldn't be. Like we should be able to be vulnerable. We should be able to be ourselves. Like
absolutely. So I think that's really cool. So incorporating some of the education on life stuff that can help you cope and be successful in your job. That's pretty cool.
Yes.
That's a honk. Yeah, baby.
I think that we need to actually get a honk on the board here.
Come on, Dani. Stop ruining my honks.
Charlie, in the early days, he will remember this. He used to send me YouTube videos with geese. And he would just pull up YouTube geese videos and email them to me.
Oh my gosh, that's great.
I love that.
I could have a better
walk by him
honk.
somewhere, he'd just look at me and go,
you couldn't have a better honk.
Okay, so I think we're down to our last con, right?
A con. Oh boy.
Maybe there isn't one.
So I will say there was one, and I think I'm going to bring it back to what you said. I think the interaction because all of our companies need to work together for various reasons.
We're getting back to the dental stuff. I think I can see it coming.
I believe that we all need to find a better way to integrate with one another and embrace each other's companies a bit better.
Yeah.
Because what ends up happening is, so I will say this is a con. I need to integrate into so-and-so, and their tech team is busy, and I'm not a priority, but yet it's a priority for the customer.
Right.
And I get put down on the line, then they don't get back to me, and I don't get back to them, and there's a bit of a shit show that goes on around that. And
it's a total problem.
I think that we need to figure out, because our companies are all having to work together, it's not an option anymore. Mm-hmm. The integration, the payment, the Gates, the Akras of the world, all of us have to figure out a way to work together, and I don't think we have a choice. So
there's some people that think they're going to take over every aspect, and I'm here to say, I'll look right in the camera. You're wrong. Yeah, you're wrong. Stay in your lane. I hate that when people used to tell me that, but stay in your lane, right? I get a little worked up because there's people that are trying to do everything. It's like, give me a break, man.
Yeah.
Give me a break.
I agree.
It's impossible. And those of us that know some of this stuff, I mean,
you can't be everything to everyone.
You can't, and you're not going to be.
You're not.
And you're going to be really bad at a lot of things.
Right.
Well, I hear that a lot. So there's a lot of companies out there who want to get into payments and this and that. I'll often, and then people want like an all-inclusive thing. And I'll say, but you know what? I eat, sleep, and breathe this every day.
That's right.
This is what my company does.
Yeah.
These guys are really good at this. We're really good at this. Combine us, merge us.
Hallelujah.
Right? But I think that's an important piece. I think
that's a honk.
Absolutely.
That's a con.
That's a honk because you just said it. Like, you know what? We're really good at little widget. And we're vision stuff, but it's software, right? And we're not in the hardware business.
No.
I don't build cameras. We're partnered with the people that have been building cameras for over 50 years.
Right.
And they're I'll tell you what, they're really good at building cameras.
Yeah.
And I'm not ever going to try to build a camera. No way.
No.
Why would I? Let the people that have been doing it for 50 years.
Let them be good at what they do.
They're pretty good at it. And it's the same thing. I'm not going to get into payments. I'm going to let those people be really good at that.
Really good at it. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to be really good at identifying objects and things that come onto your property. We're going to identify all of that, but we're not going to build cameras, and we're not going to be payments.
Yeah.
So
that's exactly right.
I love that. Well, Kacey,
on that note,
as unfortunately as we wrap up, we could sit here and we could talk we could talk for hours. We can continue.
It's fun, guys. I think I want more podcasts.
Yeah, please. I know. Please come back. We would love to have you anytime you want to come back to Denver.
Thank you.
We'll do another session and then we'll go skiing.
Absolutely.
Oh,
no. We'll at least go to Breckenridge and we'll do some après ski.
All right, fine. I'm down for the après.
So as we wrap up here, I mean, if you could leave our listeners just with one thing, one key piece of information that you hold near and dear to your heart about our industry, what would that be?
Listen, change. I want to say there's a lot of change going on, and just sort of embrace it. Go with it. There's a lot of change. I think we all need to embrace the change and figure out how we're all going to manage the change
and work together
and be kind to one another. And listen, kindness is key at the end of the day.
I love it.
Kindness is key.
Kindness is key.
All right. Well, thank you, Kacey, for coming in.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Awesome.
It was so nice.
So we appreciate it so much. Thanks for coming to visit us in Denver.